Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Show here. One thing I did not mention in the last part was I recorded it last night in the description. And while my video was editing in my video editor, I actually fell asleep. Now, because of that, I'm going to be trying to post this video now and one after work. Anyway, one thing I forgot to mention is Deku was actually healing his body because his body has a healing factor and a regeneration factor. Now, the regeneration, that's one of his body's natural powers because of the hakai energy, or actually being a descendant of a god. The god would probably heal very fast, but also he can can use a small part of his life force, I mean a very small portion of it, to turn on the healing factor and fuel it with hakai energy. Now, doing this would actually turn a few strands of his hair white. So, like how Todoroki has half his hair is white and half is red, the very center of Deku's hair, he would have like a white line splitting it, so his hair would be green and white throughout the middle. This would not last very long because the color would eventually return, but it would just age the hair cells very rapidly. Not hair cells. It would do that very rapidly, but the pigmentation or the color will return in a while. Now then, Deku essentially did that against his mother. I forgot to mention a bit of a retcon. But now, Deku would be in the recovery place, and everyone would have asked him what happened and how or why his body did that to him. He would explain, and as he would explain, he would take the hair braid out of his hair and mix his hair around, and the center of it would be white. Everyone's commenting on how Deku's hair is kind of messed up. He would explain that whenever he does turn on the healing factor, he turns part of his hair white because it requires a little, like, like it requires like 1% of the 1% of your life force. So it's a very thin streak. Like less than 2% of Deku's hair in the middle has turned white. So yeah. Anyway, cut to the bus with the students. Deku and Toga are actually cuddling, and they're doing like how if you were to, instead of facing with your legs forward on the bus, they're both turned sideways and actually leaning against where the window is. So they're actually laying down and relaxing, and everyone's talking to them, and they're actually on the back of the bus. Someone would ask about Deku's hair, because they probably didn't get the explanation. So yeah, Deku would explain some of his powers better to everyone, and about how his quirk works. But after that, Deku would then, well, not now, but afterwards, Deku, no. The bus would come to a stop and they relax and stop by the cliff. Deku's looking off and actually thinking to himself that this would be the perfect place to train. But what's their field trip going to be? As soon as this clicks in his head, he would have actually turned around and tried jumping up into the air. But as soon as he jumped up into the air to start flying, he was essentially holding Toga's hand, so he would have put Toga on his back and jumped up into the air. Now, as soon as this happened, the Pussycats would have created the landslide. Because let's say Deku wasn't paying attention to them at the time. And to make this what if a bit crazier, not Deku. I'll say that in a minute. But afterwards, Deku would use this like high energy, blasting away a lot of these monsters and actually getting into the training area in less than 2 minutes with Toga. Afterward, Deku would begin relaxing and actually meditating. So he's sitting there levitating in the air while Toga goes over to a bench and actually sits down. Now, after doing this, Koda, he would see Deku flying and he would walk over and actually ask Deku how he's doing that. Deku would state that it's one of the things he can do with his quirk. Now, Koda, he actually doesn't have a disgust for, or distaste for heroes, because in this what if, let's say neither one of his parents died, but one of them actually has encountered Muscular before, but they just got like a broken arm and a couple brief injuries. Now then, after this, Koda would start talking with Deku, and Deku would explain some of his powers better. Then he would tell Koda about how he can actually take him for a flight if he would like to. He would then do this, and let's cut to probably an hour and 30 minutes later. Deku would arrive back, and everyone would be arriving, asking why is Deku like coming back just now. Cut to Koda actually coming out from behind Deku with a soda and a snack, actually stating that Deku is the best hero ever because he took him out for a flight, he took him down to the fair, and actually got him some candy. Now, the Pussycats would be a little bit mad about this, but Koda essentially went from not having a very good time there because his parents had to do hero work to actually liking some of the students there, so he's not being a little turd. Now, this time, Deku, Toga, and Deku's mom, she would actually have stepped out of the shadows saying that that's something a good hero would do. He'd make others smile even whenever they don't think they can. So now, Toga to train her quirk, she's essentially just drinking down blood after blood sample of everyone in 1A. Because let's say that they. Actually, no. Let's say that Principal Nezu actually provided. Well, he asked a bunch of heroes for blood samples, and a lot of heroes would actually donate tons and tons and tons. Well, let's say a lot of pro heroes donated blood samples. So Togo would be actually drinking the blood and turning into these pro heroes, and then using their quirks. The reason she's doing this to train her quirk is to essentially be able to use a lot of other quirks. Now, Deku and his mom would actually be training by like Deku would swim out to the bottom of the ocean and try and like do push-ups down there. He would lift up mountains and do squats with them on his back, bench pressing a mountain and holding it up. And they'd actually do a lot of combat training and moving very fast. Class 1A is actually doing more extreme versions of their own quirk training. Mineta is essentially doing the same thing Deku's doing, but on a smaller scale with like trees and stuff like that. He's actually like using his quirk. He's essentially making blades out of his hands and cutting down trees and then bench pressing them and moving them around and stuff like that and actually throwing them. So he is doing that for his quirk training to train one for all. And now let's cut to later on in the day when everyone's cooking. Deku would have actually made a meal that everyone would probably really, really like the smell of. Because let's say that, no, actually, Deku, one thing he also did with his hero training or quirk training was get exposed to his mother's hakai energy, and he would have screamed his lungs out for 5 hours straight, exposing himself to it. And everyone would have heard Deku just screaming out in the middle of the forest. Because she would have actually made this one more potent than the last one she exposed Deku to. No, Deku would have actually, like, he would have passed this training and actually, yeah, he would have been fine, but it would take him a minute to rest and recuperate. So they're cooking. Deku is actually cooking up a lot of things. He would have washed his hands and he's not actually using a knife. He's just cutting through vegetables and like other meats and stuff like that with his bare hands. Because he can essentially do what, if you've ever seen Escanor do it to Meliodas during their whole assault mode fight, or do it to the Ten Commandment guy, the Commandment of Love, he would move his hand down really fast and it would cut something in half. Everyone's watching as Deku is essentially doing this effortlessly, and he would then put together a meal so delicious that everyone would have asked Deku what exactly he did. Toga's actually enjoying the meal, everyone's actually enjoying the meal. And a lot of the girls are jealous because essentially Toga and Deku are dating, everyone knows that. And yeah, everyone's a bit jealous of Toga. A lot of the girls are, but anyway, cut away from that. Now then, the villain attack where Toga and Dobby are heroes. Hmm. Let's say that they have a different fire villain this time. I actually have an OC for UA Year 1 that's a villain that has a flame quirk, but it's a bit more advanced than Dobby's cremation. Yeah, let's use Heater. Her name is like a. I'd have to look at her name. Hang on. Okay, I found the stats. Her name is Manenko Juroko or Jurek. I would show you guys the thing, but it has my Discord name, and I don't really want to give that out right now. But her name is basically a parody on flame and fire. So yeah, her quirk essentially allows her to heat up her body. Like she could use her body heat and heat it up to the point where she would look like she's producing smoke off her body. But as soon as she would touch something, it would just burst into flames because of how hot it is. I created her as a villain to be an opposing force to my bone manipulation hero. Now, one thing I kind of figured out after creating this villain was apparently the number one hero that Comic Sans made is actually called Frostbite. So that kind of means if I were to create a hero, well, actually, no, not a hero. That means that my villain would kind of counter his villain. They're opposing forces. But anyway, she doesn't have any burns. She just has like small bandage. She just has like bandages covering her face a lot. And essentially, she would dye her hair and wear contacts to try and hide her identity. Because she's wanted for a lot of pyro. She's wanted for like a lot of like random fires and occurrences involving fire. Because of her quirk being so dangerous. No, anyway. So they have a different fire villain. Let's say Majuro. Now, Deku would he would have gone to find Koda during the villain attack because yeah, that happens. there's something on my screen, and I just tried to get rid of it. But anyway. Now, afterward, okay, I'm still recording. Afterward, Deku, he would find Koda and try and bring Koda back, but Koda would, well, not Koda, not yet Koda. The brain work. Okay, so now, as they were running back or flying back, Deku would have actually gotten tackled by Muscular. and, and he would have come down to the ground. Now, Deku would have punched Muscular in the face, knocking off his mask and cloak, and Koda would see the villain and say that he's pretty sure his dad's encountered that villain. Because he said that he's seen what Muscular looks like, so he knows it's Muscular, but he would say that his dad actually fought that villain and lost, but he barely escaped with his life. Now, Muscular would say that if that's the case, he's going to get back at those heroes by taking, since his dad took his eye, he's going to take his kid. Deku gets really mad at this and actually goes to fight Muscular. Now, he's actually on par with Muscular at 100%, but now Deku, he's essentially taking the toll on his body because he's got his energy inside his body. He's been training to actually use his power at 100% this way. And he's somewhat stable. But now, Muscular and Koda are fighting. Muscular and Deku are fighting. And Deku would actually, essentially, he'd go overboard and actually turn his hands on fire. And his aura, instead of being purple, his quirks have finally, accepted each other. So now his purple is red. So he's essentially covered in red aura, like Super Saiyan God, but his hair is not red and his eyes aren't red. But now, he's covered in this aura and he's actually fighting Muscular. Now, he's not paying attention, but anytime Muscular gets his arm, Muscular would then, do that whole thing where Deku would be holding back Muscular's arm and it's just trying to overpower Deku. Now, Deku would actually fire as much of his hakai energy and fire into his right arm as possible, and he'd actually blow Muscular's right arm off. But doing so, Muscular would have been sent into shock, and he would have passed out. Because after Deku blew his right arm off, he punched him in the face. Because the momentum behind it was so powerful. And whenever he did this, he actually burned the entire right side of Muscular's face. And Muscular would have been passed out. Now, Deku would have then flown Koda over to the Pussycats and told them about how he just took down a villain. But they need to call a doctor or any hero that they need to call medical help now because that villain is very, very heavily injured. And he might die if he's left untreated. So one of the Pussycats would actually inform a teacher, Eraserhead would have been informed and he would have called Principal Nezu. Nezu would have made the appropriate calls and everyone would be sent out there. Now then, let's say that Muscular, he would have told Deku that they're here for someone called Toga. Or he would have said Toga's last name, and Deku would have noticed that he would have realized that they're here for her because they think she can be a villain. And that's somewhat true because of how she needs to use her quirk. But this is what would have sent Deku over the edge and actually make him blow Muscular's arm off. Now, afterward, Deku would be going around the forest trying to find everyone. He would take out the magnetic guy, the reptile guy. He would take out Mikoto, or Majiro. My OC for that's replacing Dobby. It works. Don't question it. Flame quirks aren't very rare, but now she's making an appearance. She might replace Dobby anytime I make Endeavor an actually good father. I know. I'm just as surprised as you are. But now, afterward, he'd be looking for Toga and he can't find her. So he'd get very mad and actually fly around the area. Mr. Compress would have told Deku about how they're looking for two people actually, and he would hold out two marbles saying that he's got he has Toga and Bakugo and Dark Shadow, or actually no, Moonfish. That's the person I've been forgetting on all these what ifs. Deku would have actually punched Mr. Compress right in the Moonfish. And after he did this, Mr. Compress, he would have compressed his body because he was going for a lot of spikes. Toga would have gotten out of her marble, but Bakugo still captured in his marble. Now, Deku would have shot as many fireballs at Mr. Compress and Moonfish as he can. He would have actually broken Moonfish's teeth and actually make him very injured. Now, afterward, Deku would actually break Mr. Compress's spine and get Bakugo back. Also, so he'd crush the marble and Bakugo would pop out. Toga would have copied Deku's quirk and actually gone around flying and seeing if everyone was okay. And yeah, now afterward, yeah, I'll just explain that in the next part. Alright, everyone have a good day, and I hope you enjoyed this part because I re-recorded it because I felt like the other part was too long, and I actually didn't include the villain attack on the forest arc. So anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed the video, and have an awesome day.